About 2 months ago, I uploaded a short documentary called God Provides. And in this video, I'm going to be walking through my process of how I edit, what will be going through my mind. I'm someone who enjoys creating, not just videos, just that art of putting something together, creating something new, sometimes from nothing, but sometimes from the elements that you have. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down different sections of the documentary. If you've watched it, thank you. If not, maybe you want to watch that before you watch this. Got my laptop here, so I will be shifting eyeline from the camera to the laptop as we play back certain parts of the video. I feel sometimes it's not about buying 100 different plugins or getting the latest LUTs that make your video look cinematic. I think sometimes, especially for videos like this, like short documentaries, certain small things that just make the story sound better and look better. With that said, I'm going to play the first 30 to 45 seconds.
In this season of my life, I'm pretty much a choreographer, but I started off just being a dancer. There was a point in my life where something came alive. Something became wonderful and important. I didn't want to make the mistake of saying, yeah, I'm going to live to be 80 or 90, because the Bible does say tomorrow is not guaranteed. So I only have today. If we get to figure out why we are here early, and we wake up without any hazy thought, without any doubt, and you are fully focused in knowing that this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm here, I think it changes everything.
Okay, so I'm going to pause there. Those first 45 seconds essentially became the trailer. Having a design background, I always like using graphics. And sometimes it's a good thing, but sometimes it's actually a bad thing because I end up overthinking stuff and I end up never finishing projects because I'm not happy with the graphics. So in this project, I tried by all means to push myself to just get the graphics to a certain level. And after that, I was like, that's it. I'm happy. Let's move on. I just want to go through some of the things that we saw in those first 45 seconds. The first thing being the first section where we see footage from, I don't know, years ago. And thankfully, Sean, who's the main character in this documentary, has archives of how when he started and all the different things that he was doing as a dancer, as a choreographer. And I was able to get some of those clips and use them. And because they are old clips, I just didn't feel like just putting them there. I was like, how can we give them a little bit more feeling apart from them just being put on there? And I thought of this look, and honestly, it's not groundbreaking. There are a lot of editors who've used this, but it gave the idea of, I don't know if you know this toy, what is it called? I don't know if they still make these, but used to play with it a long time ago, and you'll be seeing an image in a little box, and then there's negative space around it. That's the feeling I had when I was editing this part.
In this season of my life, I'm pretty much a choreographer.
Over and above what Sean is saying, it just helps to tell or make you, the viewer, feel something a little bit extra apart from what is being said, and maybe the music. And then another thing that I put in this first 45 seconds are subtitles. Actually, I put the subtitles, I think, in the first 10 seconds. I put them there, not necessarily for you to follow along with what he's saying, but I was using them as a graphic element, thinking out of the box, not always seeing subtitles as something to use for the person to read. I was very intentional about this. It wasn't so that they are visible. In fact, they're actually pretty small, to the point that if you're watching it on a phone, you might not be able to read what the subtitles are saying. I did probably 95% of the graphics inside Premiere Pro. Depending on your editing style, you might be cringing right now, or you might be like, wow, that is interesting. And a little bit of context, I do most of my graphics inside After Effects because it's just way more natural to me. I prefer the way of animating inside After Effects. but you can animate certain things in Premiere Pro. And I wanted to try that out with this project. And I think to a certain degree, I was successful because 95% of the graphics were entirely done in Premiere Pro. Like I'm not talking about dynamic links or anything, like literally editing and animating, doing keyframes, everything inside Premiere Pro. And one of the biggest issues, of course, would be motion blur. But if you know how, editing works, I was able to painfully figure out how to get motion blur. It was a longer process, but yeah, I'm glad I did it because it opened up a few more doors for me in terms of using Premiere Pro as a sole tool. But all these graphics, all the text, I did it in Premiere Pro.
And important, I didn't want to make the mistake of saying, yeah, I'm going to live to be 80 or 90.
So you'll see that every time we have a little, I think it's a click that's happening with the track, like a little, I'm adding a little bit of a visual just to help tell the story a bit better. So for example, this part where it says tomorrow is not guaranteed, right? I actually include an animation of just a simple box that covers the word tomorrow because we're saying tomorrow is not guaranteed. So if I play that back.
Tomorrow is not guaranteed. So I only have today.
I went with a very simple way of showing articles. I didn't want to get an article online and just put it as a screenshot or as an image. So I just copied most of the article. I just put it as actual text, put it over a black and white background that has like something playing in the back. And this was Sean receiving an award, and the articles talk about Sean and all of that. So one of the biggest things as a creative, not just a video editor, when you're trying to create something, you're trying to make it look a little bit better than it would by itself. As editors, we're trying to show something in an interesting way. I don't want to go overboard with the graphics. I just wanted to do something that is very simple, but helps the story. So he talks about having hazy thoughts. And the first thing that came to my mind is when you get stunned by a grenade, right? I used to play a lot of Call of Duty in my university days. And, when you get stunned by a grenade, I think even in movies, that's what happens. You're a bit hazy and then there's a very high pitched sound. That's essentially what I did here. I put that just a little bit of a high pitched hissing sound. And then I also made the overall frame blurry a little bit. If I play it back, you'll see.
Without any hazy thought, without any doubt.
So it's little things that if you've watched the video, you might have not noticed, but you might have felt it. And I think that's the biggest thing. The best edits are the ones that you don't see them, but you feel them. I hope that makes sense. And this banner, if we may call it, I was actually testing out the new object masking tool in Premiere Pro, and it was super quick. It was amazing. And then I used I think it's the posterize tool. Since it wasn't a really good shot in terms of lighting, I wanted to hide that a little bit and make it seem like a cartoon version of Sean. One of the biggest hurdles that editors have as an editor that we have is when you're trying to edit something that you don't feel like you have control over it. You don't feel like you have control over the narrative. It's different when you're editing a scripted movie where the flow of the story is figured out. But if you're getting a project or if you're working on a project that you're yet to kind of figure out the script like a documentary, and don't get me wrong, you can still script a documentary to a certain degree. You can plan it out. You can plan the questions you're going to ask. You can plan what you're going to target in terms of story coverage. But there are certain things that will pop up from the interviews and all of that will be new. And you now need to include it in the story, or you feel like you want to include it. So in those kind of situations where you're kind of trying to edit and determine what the A role is, I feel like if you don't have control over it, it kind of can affect how well you edit because you feel the pressure. And for me, as someone who's very detail oriented, I struggle when I don't know what's happening. I felt I needed to create a narrative arc for this project. And I think you would want to do the same if you're working on one. And I split it into, I think, 4 different chapters. In chapter 1, we are establishing who Sean is and what does he do, where's his life coming from, where is it going. And then we sort of, in chapter 2, find out the challenges that he faced in his life, some of the downs. And then in chapter 3, we talk about freedom from Christ or of Christ. How has he come back, if he has, from the challenges that he's faced? And lastly, we find the conclusion of what is Sean doing and what's the future looking like. So it's sort of like creating an arc where you establish what's going on, and that's how you write a story, really. Establish what's going on, establish the characters, and then, let us know if there's any conflict or issues. And then how does the character, in our case, Sean, how does he tackle the challenges, or what happens to him, and then we have a conclusion of where is he at now and where is he going. That really helped me to edit it differently, because every chapter I was also introducing a song. So I was very specific as well with the kind of songs I was choosing. The first 2 chapters are very, calm, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. And then as we go towards the end, the music becomes a bit more hopeful and uplifting. It's still cinematic and calm, but it changes. And I feel that really helps with documentary style edits, just to bring in a different feeling over and above what the person is saying. Remember that you're trying to help the viewer feel something that the speaker can't say with just words. So you are, through music, through graphics, through how you cut your sequence. I shot most of the B-roll in low light situations, and I was running away from bringing a lot of lights or any lights at all. It was just me and the camera in natural light, because I didn't want to make a big deal of how I was shooting, because knowing myself, I probably would have taken way longer to eventually shoot. So I tried to use natural lights, but of course, and I remember the B-roll, we shot it, or rather I miscalculated golden hour, tried to use Sunseeker app, but I was completely wrong. Actually, I was right, but long story. One thing that really helped me was in DaVinci Resolve, they now have a native, forget what the name of the effect is called, but it's essentially a mist or halation effect. But I think they've always had it, but this one is AI powered and it works really good. I think it's going to improve a little bit more, but that's what I used in most of these B-roll shots, just to save the shots, really. These shots were very grainy, and you could tell that it was low light. And I shot the B-roll on an FX30, and it didn't do really well, unfortunately. I also didn't have a lens that could open up really wide. I think I was shooting at f2.8. So I really was saved by DaVinci. Thank you. To make some of these shots look like I had a fog machine. I think this is probably the only graphic that I did in After Effects, because I tried to do it in Premiere Pro, but I was like, no, I'm not getting what I want. So I did this in After Effects. I think one of the things I like about editing documentaries is I'm not trying to make a cinematic movie or anything like that. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be cinematic. I'm just saying I like the fact that it's just really about the story, and I don't need to really overthink a lot of things. So in this section, I was just like, what's a better way of showing the images? Because Sean wanted me to really show the traveling that he's done and all of that. And then he gave me a bunch of clips which were in different orientations, different looks. Some are more saturated than the other and all of that. And I think this is where, again, as an editor, you need to sort of think of how can I show this in a way that just helps to tell the story and not just really take something as you were given and then put it in. So I just thought of this wheel of images going. Instead of making it look like a slideshow, I just wanted it to be like a wheel of pictures, one bigger one and a smaller one. They're just sliding through. And I changed all the images I edited all of them and made them square images inside Photoshop. I ran away from doing it in Premiere Pro because it doesn't really do well with images that are in different kind of aspect ratios and orientations and all of that. You can edit them, but if you're trying to do something that's uniform like this, I just found it easier to use Photoshop. And then I also put the white border in Photoshop as well, exported them as PNG files. And that way they had the exact same aspect ratio, exact same pixels and all of that. If you use Premiere Pro, images are notorious for making Premiere Pro slow, depending on your setup and how powerful your computer is. If your images have a very high pixel density or high resolution, you want to make sure you edit them before you put them in your project, because they can slow down your project. And you might think, oh, it's all these effects that I'm putting. It could just be like one image that you put that has a very high resolution. I can't stress this enough. The image can even be small in terms of size, but as long as the resolution is big, it might actually make it slow. Sean wanted me to show how he's traveled and the number of people he's impacted. He's really dealt with thousands of people, I'm pretty sure. I didn't want to have, again, another just simple slideshow of one image after another, and there wasn't really time in the video to show all these images. So I just did that little quick montage in the beginning, and then it ends off with a collage of different images. So those are some of the things that I felt would be great to talk about on what was going through my mind, how I was creating this. And please do let me know if you like me to show you how I worked in Premiere Pro, like the actual work files. I'd be happy to do that. Some of the lessons that I learned from creating but also editing this documentary is how important it is to also have a pre-visualizer if you can when it comes to editing. And you could make a pre-visualizer before you even shoot everything, but you can also make it after you shot and you're trying to edit, especially for a documentary, because some of the things that you will use in a documentary, not live action stuff. It's not stuff that you shot. It's stuff that you need to source. You need to look for articles. If whatever you are covering is something that has been covered by news channels or by journalists somewhere, or if there are written records of whatever you're talking about, you have to go and research, look for that stuff. So before you find and edit and refine all of that stuff, you can actually make a pre-visualizer of what it would look like if you were to put an article in this section. So what I did is I edited the entire interview and stripped it down, and then I started to add a little bit of elements to see what it would look like. Another important thing that I feel is worth knowing that may not be visible in the video is that the final video is 7 minutes, 24 seconds. But the entire interview, where I sat down with Sean and asked him a bunch of questions, was a little over an hour. And I can't stress enough how that is important for you as an editor. Your main role is to find value and find where the story is and find a way to tell the story in the most relatable way. If that means removing certain things, then you must. And almost all the time, you need to remove a bunch of things. I think most movies have what they call a shooting ratio, which is essentially how much footage you shoot as compared to the actual footage that will be used in the final film. And I think most movies use anywhere between 1% to 5% of what they shot in the actual movie. So you find that there are movies that will have 400 hours worth of footage, but we only watch the 2 hours of the movie. It's because the editors had to go in, and I know there will be like a lot of different takes and a lot of, redoing certain scenes, but there's also a bunch of stuff that they just cut out because it's not working. It might have been scripted that way, but in the editing room, you might feel this is not really telling the story. So in my case, I had two things that were working towards me cutting down the entire interview. First of all, I didn't want it to be an hour long, but also I felt like I could bring down all that he had said into under 10 minutes because, he was talking about different things. If you listen to the full interview, you see that he touched many different things. But if we were to put it under 10 minutes, essentially, this is what he was saying. And I think this also really helps a viewer to have such an explosion of information that could have gone on for an hour, but is now compressed to 7 minutes, 24 seconds. And then lastly, I'll say, you might have your views about AI and all of that, but it's really useful in certain cases. I think I tried it out this time around when I did this to see how I can integrate AI into my workflow. And it really helped me when it came to structuring the script because I had broken down essentially what I wanted from the full interview. So I'd taken all the different pieces that I wanted and I put them down into a structure that I felt was really good. But I was like, let me see if, chat can help me structure this even better. So I took the cut down script that I had already made and then put it into chat, and then it suggested a different structure, which is actually pretty much what we saw in this video, and it's close to it. So it allowed me to restructure everything, and it helped me with the story narrative arc. So that's one thing as well to note. Don't use AI to create everything, but use it as a guide to help you see better what you are already envisioning. It's not like I asked AI to tell me what to go and ask this guy and what he should say and then all of that. No, I did all of that, cut it down, and I had what I wanted. And I just wanted AI to restructure it for me. I hope this video was helpful. I hope it was somewhat an eye-opener to what was going through my mind as I was editing this. And maybe it can help you in some way or shape or form. If it was helpful, please do leave a comment down below. And please do let me know what you'd like to know apart from what I've shared already. And I'll be sure to make a video about that. Until next time, my name is Z, and cheers.